Let me ask you something gently. Have you ever caught yourself saying something to you that you'd never say to someone you love? Maybe it sounded like, I can't do this, or I always mess things up, or even just a defeated, what's the point? If you're a college student trying to figure your next move, or working a job that pays the bills but doesn't quite light your soul on fire, this message is for you. Because here's something we don't talk about enough. The way we speak to ourselves is either building our future or burying it. Neuroscience tells us our words shape our brains. Over time, they build pathways that make certain thoughts automatic, even when those thoughts hurt us. So today, I want to show you how changing the way you communicate with yourself, with others, and with something greater than you can radically shift not just how you feel, what you're capable of. Because I care about you getting unstuck, feeling powerful again, and finding a kind of peace that doesn't vanish the moment something goes wrong. Let's start with something most people overlook. Communication isn't just how we talk, it's how we see. Most of us were never taught how to communicate with intention. We pick up patterns from our parents, teachers, culture, and experiences. And over time, we start echoing the same phrases, the same tone, the same energy, even if it doesn't serve us. Here's a simple example. Think about someone who always says, I'm just bad with money. They say it every time they overspend or avoid checking their bank account. Eventually, they stop trying to budget or learn. Their words become a permission slip for stagnation. Or someone who says, I'm just awkward around people. They say it so often that they start shrinking in conversations, even when people are kind and open. And this isn't just physiological. In neuroscience, there's something called Hebb's law. Neurons that fire together, wire together. When you keep telling yourself you're not good enough, your brain wires that as truth. It becomes easier to think, harder to question. But the same mechanism can work in your favor. When you change the story, you begin changing the structure. And it starts with the language. Now let's talk about emotional safety and why your words can either build it or block it. You might be 20, 35, or 44 years old. You might be figuring out your major, stuck in a job you don't love, or trying to start something new at midnight after a long shift. Wherever you are, your words are carrying your identity. And often, without realizing it, we use vague or harsh language because we're scared of committing to the work, the dream, or to be the person we're becoming. Let me paint a picture. Maybe you've started your to-do list and you started staring at it. And then you tell yourself, I'll probably get to that later. Knowing full well later usually means never. Or maybe someone asks how you're feeling. And instead of being real, you hit them with, same old, even though inside you're feeling restless, stuck, or cautiously hopeful, but afraid to admit it out loud. Or here's another one. Thinking about starting something new, maybe a business, a blog, a course. And instead of saying, I'm doing it, maybe you tell your friends, yeah, I've been thinking about it, like you're tiptoeing around your own potential. And then there are the harsher phrases that sneak into your mind. I'm a loser. I'll never figure it out. I'll never get a good paying job. We say these things not because we're lazy or doomed, but often because we care too much. We're anxious. We feel like we should already have figured it out. And when the pressure builds, self-doubt becomes a form of emotional release, an attempt to name the storm before it drowns us. But here's a shift. What if that anxiety isn't a flaw? What if it's energy, untrained, unfiltered, and untamed, that's just waiting to be directed? What if saying, I'll never get a good paying job is really just the fear of not knowing where to start? Here's how to harness that. Turn, I don't know what I'm doing into, I haven't learned this yet, but I can. Turn, I'm a loser into, I've been operating without clarity, but I'm seeking it now. And turn, I can't figure this out into, this is stretching me, but I'm still showing up. And here's something critical to understand. Sometimes it takes getting comfortable with being uncomfortable to retrain our brains. Growth often shows up wearing the disguise of resistance. If you feel awkward trying to speak more positively to yourself, that's normal. If journaling your thoughts or saying affirmations out loud feels silly at first, that's also normal. You're literally rewiring your brain, and the brain resists change. even good change, because it craves the familiar. So here's a few reliable, doable steps to make it easier. Number one, start with one phrase. Catch yourself in a negative loop and just pause and say, that's not helping me. And then choose a more helpful version. Number two, build in truth bridges. If I'm amazing feels fake, say, I'm learning how to believe I'm capable. Meet your brain halfway. Number three, repeat during emotional neutrality. Speak the better version when you're calm, not just in crisis. That's when your brain is most open to rewiring. And number four, stack it with action. Change your inner dialogue and then take a small step that reinforces the new belief. Action reinforces alignment. When we shift the language, we reclaim the energy. That anxiety you feel, it means you care. Now it's time to channel it into skill, into action, into progress. That's how you build the life you want. Now, let me share something that hit home for me. For years, I hated flying, not just discomfort, but real anxiety. My body would stay tense the entire flight. I couldn't relax, couldn't breathe normally. I'd imagine worst case scenarios before we even took off. Eventually, I realized this isn't about flying. It's about expectation. My brain had been trained to expect danger, so it produced fear. I didn't take flying lessons, but I did something just as powerful. I started studying flight, how liftoff works, how pilots are trained, how often planes are maintained, and why they're built the way they are. I gave my brain a new story, one based on understanding, not imagination. Neuroscience shows that anxiety is often triggered by uncertainty, not danger itself. Once I gave my brain certainty, it rewired the fear. Now I sleep on planes, sometimes before we even take off. The same principle applies to your daily life. If you expect things to go wrong, your brain will amplify every sign of trouble. But when you shift your internal language and build evidence for success, you give your brain permission to believe in better outcomes. Let's shift this into the most important relationship you've ever had, the one with yourself. If someone spoke to your best friend the way you speak to yourself, would you step in? Because here's something most people don't realize. You are listening, even when you're not paying attention. The internal comments like, I'm not disciplined enough, or I always mess this up, create neural ruts. They make those thoughts easier to think the next time. But you can interrupt that. You can begin telling yourself, I'm learning to be more consistent. That didn't work out, but it taught me something. Or I might be struggling, but I'm not stuck. That kind of internal communication builds resilience, not delusion. It aligns your inner world with the truth of growth. Now here's something deeper. How do you talk to something bigger than yourself? I'm a firm believer that prayer isn't about changing God's mind. It's about syncing our hearts with a higher pattern. Whether you call it God, the divine, or simply purpose, when you speak to something higher, you recenter. You get pulled out of your spiral and reminded you're part of something meaningful. This kind of communication isn't always about answers. Often it's about anchoring. And when you start listening differently, not for instruction, but for alignment, your actions start flowing from a calmer, clearer place. Let's talk about how you speak to other people, because that matters more than we think. Ever been lost and had someone give you directions like, just go down past where the old gas station used to be, then take a left at the big oak tree? Confusing, right? That's how most people communicate when they don't take the time to understand their own message first. They hand out a jumbled puzzle of thoughts, hoping the other person will assemble it. But powerful communicators, they hand you a map, clear, intentional, and focused on where you need to go, not just where they've been. In relationships, at work, or when asking for support, don't just dump your thoughts. Think, how do I make this land in a way that serves the person in front of me? It's not about sounding smart. It's about making someone else feel seen, safe, and understood. When you do that, people lean in. Conversations become connection. And that connection, that's the currency of trust. Now let's bring that into the tech world, because communication matters there too. We're entering a world where your ability to describe what you want directly affects your ability to get it. AI, for all its power, is a mirror of your prompts. If you can't express clearly, it can't help effectively. Think of AI as a language amplifier. The more precise and thoughtful your words, the more powerful your results. So even in the tech world, human level communication is the leverage. Let's simplify this whole thing. You don't need 100 tactics. You need 2 habits. Number 1, read better words with book articles, transcripts like this. Quality input matters. You're feeding your mind's ingredients. Choose high grade fuel. And number 2, write your reflections, not what someone else said, but what it made you think. That's your unique angle. That's where growth compounds. Over time, these 2 habits reshape your internal communication, and that reshapes everything else. So let me close with this. You're not failing, you're learning how to listen to yourself more clearly. And that alone is progress. You may be carrying some unhelpful language, but you can lay it down now. Start by speaking to yourself like someone who matters, like someone who deserves grace, consistency, and clarity. Because when you talk better to yourself, to your creator, to the people around you, you begin to live better. And when you live better, you lead others there too. So let's walk that out together. Hey, if this message resonated with you, do me a favor. Share this with someone you care about. Hit the like button if this is a helpful shift that shifted something inside you. And drop a comment below. What's one phrase you're letting go of? And what are you replacing it with? Let's not just talk about change. Let's start living it. Make sure you're subscribed to Mind Hackers. We've got so much more for you.